Just look at Brad Gates' stuff. Wild Boar Farms, it's amazing. They call them the modern heirlooms as well. They're all open pollinated and everything. But they're not the heirlooms yet. That's typically designated 50, 60 years, depending who you talk to and everything. But yeah, it's kind of cool. Just select. And if you're starting off with a hybrid, I mean, it takes 8 years before it's considered a stable vine. That's not unreasonable for most of us. So.
Yeah, and I think probably most of our heirlooms now started as a hybrid, as a mutation, as a mistake, right? That was cool or delicious or grew really well somewhere.
Wasn't Green Zebra an example of that?
Yeah, that's one of Tom Wagner's. I don't know the history of how.
I feel like there was a big argument on whether it was considered heirloom because of its lineage, but now people like it is.
Yeah, it's not an heirloom because that's only been around, not that long.
I feel like, if I remember correctly, it was one of those situations where it just kind of kept
There was a good point about like a Venn diagram between heirloom and open pollinated and when they cross and when they don't. And an example is a Tobacco Road farm in Lebanon, Connecticut grows salad mixes, different greens, and they really like the hybrid vigor in anything. Even the Polish watermelon that they sell through my catalog has got some hybrid vigor, has a pretty diverse gene pool, and they're all open pollinated. So they started with ice bred arugula that was bred in Maryland, and then for a decade or a decade and a half they've been growing it in there through the winter in Connecticut, and selecting for the ones that survive the winter and thrive and have vigor. And so now they've bred it even more winter hardy. They have a Mizuna landrace that they bred with Maruba and Tatsoi, which are all Brassica grappa. And so the same species, and they only selected seeds from the Mizuna mother plants, but it's got this amazing vigor because of that genetic diversity. But they've stabilized it over many, many, many years, and so now it's an open pollinated landrace. So it's suited to
a land race that's suited for Connecticut,
for Lebanon, Connecticut, for their fields. Yeah, and so that's an open pollinated variety that's not anywhere near an heirloom because it's so recent.
And Frank Morton, Wild Garden Seed is also, that's what he's famous for, is his basically wild gardens, and he just lets nature do the work for him and then select what looks cool and interesting. And there's always a lot of diversity. I buy a lot from them, and especially in greens mixes. There's always some like cool diversity population. It's almost more like a landrace. Just wanted to flip through so we can start doing some hands-on stuff in a minute. Inbreeding depression, particularly important in crops like brassicas. Some crops it's not as big a deal. Population size, we have a handout that you can start passing around that addresses some basic facts and statistics. And then also roguing and selection. It's really important if you're going to be seed keeping. You look at your population and roguing. Say I have, for me, I do a lot of beans. So say I have black turtle beans, and I see they're supposed to be a bush bean, but there's quite a bit of vininess on occasion in them. So I want to go through, before I'm saving seed, I want to go through and basically I rip up. Or don't save seed. For me, it's easier to rip out because I have a lot. Any seeds that's not exhibiting the characteristics that I'm desiring. Corn, it could be excessive tillering. I did want to say something about hand pollination. We were going to gloss over it because it's a little bit more advanced, but the hand pollination is how I do some of my rare corns. If I'm doing, because corn's so easily cross-pollinated and it's wind-pollinated, so it's very hard to control. And it's big, so it's not like you can cover it with a row cover like you could with like a cucurbit or something. So corn, I actually have a picture. I do hand pollinate some corn. Actually, I guess it's pretty far down. I put bags over. I have tassel bags and shoot bags, and here it is. And I actually found you can actually. I ran out of the official type bags. You can use brown paper lunch bags. So I want to cover the tassels, cover the shoots. And as it gets to the silk point, I trim back the silk Just take a little pair of sharp scissors, I trim back the silk, and and I keep it covered until this point. And as their pollen, you can see when the spikes start, the pollen starts forming. You gather that, and then I mix all the pollen. And corn pollen degrades in heat, so you want to do it in the morning, preferably before noon. Like I try and shoot for hours like 8 to noon, kind of are the best corn hours for the maximum viability of the pollen. I mix it all together in a bag and I shake it, and then I go down the row, and each shoot bag I take off and I'll trim back any of the silk showing, expose the tips. And now each of those silks, I don't know if you're familiar with corn biology, but and I didn't know this until I started getting more and more into it, each piece of silk is a pollen tube, and each corn kernel is responsible for the development of one kernel in an ear of corn. So, and all it needs, so you want to shake and make sure you get good, each piece of silk potential there gets a little pollen shake on it. And when you get your corn ears not well filled out, you want to remember the pollination, how important it is. Each piece of silk needs some pollen. And then I cover it back up, and I just wait, and then, it's actually not as difficult as it looks. It's a little time consuming. I don't do, I do corn for the CSA and stuff. So I want to isolate. I do small plots of the other corns. You wouldn't want to do a lot like this because it is so time consuming. But, squashes are also, I've hand pollinated squashes, and I've done some rare watermelons that I've hand pollinated and stuff. And there you have your male and your female flowers. You just need to know, and you can go back to the basic botany one, identify the male and female flower parts there. And so with squashes, you have your male flowers, your female, you all know how to differentiate. And so for the male flower, it just has, the male flower is just stalked, and then the female flower has a little baby zucchini. We'll use zucchini as the example. It's a little baby fruit. In this case, we'll use zucchini at the base of it. And that's the ovary that turns into the fruit. And you can easily, once you start looking at it, tell the difference. And all I do is I peel the petals back and use the male flower like a little paintbrush. I pick the flower, and then I use it like a little paintbrush, peel off the petals and dab, 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 and then cover my plant back up. It's, if you have something particularly rare that you want to keep going, it's the way to do it. And then you can also, one of the things I learned, you don't have to do it for the whole season. You can just identify, and do a couple of blossoms and then mark them, whether it be like a piece of colorful yarn around the base of that particular fruit, and then you know that one was hand done. You can take the covers off and let the rest of them go and eat those. So.